I felt his hands grip my waist as he pressed me against the cool metal of his car, the Nashville nightclub's bass still thrumming through my body. The parking lot was dimly lit, shadows dancing between vehicles, but I didn't care who might see. His mouth crashed against mine with a hunger that matched my own, and I knew there was no turning back. My fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him closer as heat pooled low in my stomach. "Get in the car," he breathed against my lips, his voice rough with need. Hey there, gorgeous souls. If you're already feeling the heat from this story, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. The evening had started innocently enough. I'd gone to the club alone, needing to blow off steam after a particularly brutal week of failed auditions and dead-end gigs. The Nashville music scene was unforgiving, and at 27, I was starting to wonder if my dreams were just naive fantasies. But the moment I spotted him across the crowded dance floor, something shifted inside me. Trevor was tall, ruggedly handsome in that effortless way that made my pulse quicken. Dark hair, piercing, blue eyes, and the kind of confident stance that suggested he knew exactly what he wanted, and right now, that seemed to be me. He'd approached with a slow, deliberate swagger, his gaze never leaving mine as he navigated through the writhing bodies on the dance floor. "You look like you could use some company," he'd said, his voice cutting through the pounding music. There was something magnetic about him, something that made rational thoughts scatter like autumn leaves in the wind. We danced for what felt like hours, our bodies moving in perfect sync, the chemistry between us electric and undeniable. His hands had traced patterns along my spine, sending shivers through me despite the club's stifling heat. Every brush of his fingertips against my skin felt deliberate, purposeful, like he was mapping out territory he intended to claim. The music had grown louder, the crowd more intense, but all I could focus on was the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room, like he wanted to devour me completely. When he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear, and suggested we get some fresh air, I'd nodded without hesitation. That's how we ended up here, in the dimly lit parking lot, pressed against his sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The cool Nashville night air did nothing to calm the fire burning between us. If anything, it only intensified the heat radiating from our bodies as we kissed with desperate urgency. His hands roamed my curves through the thin fabric of my dress, each touch sending jolts of electricity straight to my core. I arched against him, craving more contact, more pressure, more of whatever this dangerous attraction was offering. The rational part of my mind whispered warnings about strangers and public places, but it was quickly drowned out by the roar of pure want. "Anyone could see us," I whispered against his lips, though the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. He pulled back just enough to meet my gaze, his eyes dark with shared intensity. "Do you care?" he asked, his thumb tracing my bottom lip with maddening slowness. The honest answer was no, I didn't care. In fact, the possibility of being caught only added to the thrill coursing through my veins. Instead of answering with words, I reached for the door handle behind me. His car was as sleek inside as it was outside. Leather seats, sophisticated sound system, and most importantly, deeply tinted windows that provided the privacy we desperately needed. The moment we were inside, he pulled me onto his lap, my dress riding up as I straddled him. The confined space only intensified everything. His scent, his warmth, the rapid rhythm of his heartbeat against my chest. His hands tangled in my hair as he kissed along my neck, finding that sensitive spot just below my ear that made me gasp. "You're incredible," he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with reverence and need. His touch was confident but not presumptuous, always checking my reactions, making sure I was with him every step of the way. There was something both thrilling and reassuring about his attentiveness. My fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel skin against skin. When I finally pressed my palms against his bare chest, he let out a low groan that vibrated through both of our bodies. His muscles tensed beneath my touch, and I could feel his restraint beginning to fray at the edges. The windows had started to fog from our shared heat, creating an intimate cocoon that felt separate from the world outside. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of other clubgoers walking to their cars, their voices and laughter a distant reminder of reality. But inside this private sanctuary, nothing existed except the two of us and the mounting tension between our bodies. His hands found the zipper at the back of my dress, lowering it with agonizing slowness. The cool air hit my exposed skin, causing me to shiver, though whether from the temperature or anticipation, I couldn't say. He traced patterns along my spine with his fingertips, each touch leaving trails of fire in its wake. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his eyes taking in every inch of newly revealed skin. There was something in his gaze that went beyond simple physical attraction, a genuine appreciation that made me feel powerful and desired in ways I'd never experienced before. I could feel how much he wanted me, the evidence pressing against me through the thin barrier of our remaining clothes. The knowledge sent a surge of confidence through me, and I began moving against him with deliberate intent, watching as his composure started to crack. His breathing grew ragged, his grip on my hips tightening as he tried to maintain some semblance of control. But I didn't want control. I wanted to lose ourselves completely in this moment, to forget about everything else except the electric connection sparking between us. We should, he started to say, but I silenced him with a kiss that left no room for rational thought. My hands worked at his belt, my intentions clear. He helped me, his movements urgent but careful, always mindful of my comfort even as passion threatened to overwhelm us both. When we finally came together, the sensation was overwhelming. He filled me completely, and for a moment we both froze, adjusting to the intensity of our connection. His forehead pressed against mine, our breathing synchronized as we savored the feeling of finally being united. Then he began to move, and rational thought became impossible. The rhythm we found together was primal and perfect, our bodies communicating in a language older than words. Every motion sent waves of pleasure radiating through me, building towards something that felt both inevitable and miraculous. The car rocked gently with our movements, and distantly I was aware of the risks we were taking, the public location, the fact that we were essentially strangers, the way we'd abandoned all pretense of caution. But none of that mattered in the face of what we were creating together. His lips found mine again, swallowing the soft sounds escaping my throat. His hands roamed my body with increasing urgency, as if he were trying to memorize every curve, every response. I could feel the tension building in both of us, coiling tighter, with each shared breath. "Look at me," he whispered, and when I met his gaze, the intensity there nearly undid me completely. There was something raw and honest in his eyes, a vulnerability that matched my own. In that moment, despite being strangers, we were completely connected. The pleasure built steadily, layer upon layer of sensation that threatened to overwhelm my senses. His rhythm never faltered, each movement precisely calculated to drive me higher. My nails dug into his shoulders as I clung to him, riding the waves of sensation that seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. Outside, I could hear the distant sounds of the city, cars passing, voices of other late-night revelers, the bass line from the club we'd left behind. But inside our private world, all that existed was the sound of our breathing, the quiet whispers of encouragement, and the steady rhythm that was carrying us both toward the edge. I could feel myself approaching that precipice, every nerve ending, alive with electricity. He must have sensed it too, because his movements became more focused, more intentional, hitting that perfect spot that made stars explode behind my closed eyelids. "Let go," he breathed against my ear. And with those words, I shattered. The climax crashed over me in waves, more intense than anything I'd ever experienced. My body trembled in his arms as pleasure coursed through every inch of me, leaving me breathless and amazed. He followed moments later, his own release powerful and all-consuming. We held each other tightly as the aftershocks rippled through us, both, neither willing to break the spell we'd created in this unlikely sanctuary. For several minutes, we simply held each other, our heartbeats gradually returning to normal. The windows had completely fogged over, creating a private world that felt separate from reality. I traced lazy patterns on his chest, marveling at how perfectly we fit together, how right this felt despite its spontaneous nature. "That was," he began, then trailed off, apparently as at a loss for words as I was. "Incredible," I finished for him, lifting my head to meet his gaze. There was something tender in his expression now, a softness that hadn't been there during our passionate encounter. It made my heart flutter in ways that had nothing to do with physical attraction. Eventually, reality began to creep back in. We helped each other dress, our movements slower now, more deliberate. There was an intimacy to these simple acts that felt almost more personal than what we'd just shared. As I smoothed down my dress and finger-combed my hair, he watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was appreciation there, certainly, but also something that might have been regret, though whether for what we'd done or for the fact that it was ending, I couldn't tell. "I should probably get going," I said reluctantly, though every fiber of my being wanted to stay in this protected space with him. He nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Of course." But as I reached for the door handle, he caught my wrist gently. "Wait." I turned back to find him pulling out his phone. "I know this was spontaneous, and I don't want you to feel any pressure, but—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I'd like to see you again, if you want to." There was something vulnerable in his request that made my chest tighten, with unexpected emotion. This wasn't just about the physical connection we'd shared, though that had been extraordinary. There was something deeper here, something worth exploring. I held out my hand for his phone and input my number, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed. When I handed it back, our fingers brushed, sending another small spark of electricity between us. "Skylar," I said, realizing we'd never even exchanged names. "Trevor," he replied with a smile that made my knees weak all over again. We stepped out of the car together, the cool night air a shock after the heated intimacy we'd shared. The parking lot looked exactly the same as when we'd entered it, but everything felt different now. I felt different. He walked me to my own car, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back, a protective gesture that sent warmth spiraling through me. At my driver's side door, he turned me to face him, his hands framing my face gently. "Thank you," he said simply, And somehow I knew he meant for more than just the physical pleasure we'd shared. He meant for the trust, for the spontaneity, for allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with each other in a way that transcended the ordinary. "Thank you too," I whispered back, meaning every word. He kissed me one last time, soft and lingering, a promise of possibilities yet to be explored. Then he stepped back, allowing me to get into my car. I watched him walk back to his own vehicle, admiring the confident way he moved, already missing his presence. As I drove home through the quiet Nashville streets, my body still humming with satisfaction, my mind raced with questions and possibilities. What we'd shared had been extraordinary, passionate, spontaneous, and surprisingly intimate despite our stranger status. But where did we go from here? The rational part of my mind urged caution. After all, I knew virtually nothing about Trevor beyond his name and the way he made my body sing. Getting involved with someone I'd met in such circumstances could be dangerous, impractical, a distraction from my already struggling music career. But another part of me, the part that was still glowing from our encounter, whispered that some connections were worth the risk. There had been something special about what we'd shared, something that went beyond mere physical attraction. The way he'd looked at me, touched me, held me afterward, it spoke of a deeper potential that I found myself eager to explore. My phone buzzed with a text message just as I pulled into my apartment complex's parking lot. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find a message from an unknown number, though I knew instantly who it was from. "Already missing you. Sleep well, beautiful." I stared at the screen for a long moment, my heart racing all over again. The smart thing would be to delete the message, to chalk tonight up to a wild adventure and move on with my life. But as I looked at those simple words, I knew I wasn't going to be able to just forget about Trevor or the incredible connection we'd discovered in the most unlikely of places. Instead, I found myself typing back, "Missing you too. Sweet dreams." As I made my way up to my apartment, I couldn't stop smiling. Tonight had been a revelation, not just about desire and passion, but about my own capacity for spontaneity and risk-taking. For years, I'd played it safe, followed the rules, tried to be the good girl who made sensible choices. But tonight, I'd thrown caution to the wind and discovered something extraordinary in return. Would I call him? Would this spontaneous encounter bloom into something more substantial, or would it remain a beautiful memory of one perfect night? Only time would tell. But as I drifted off to sleep, my body still tingling with the memory of his touch, I knew that whatever happened next, tonight had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Sometimes the most incredible experiences come from the moments when we stop overthinking and just let ourselves feel. Have you ever had an encounter that completely surprised you, where throwing caution to the wind led to something amazing? What would you do in my situation? Would you take the risk and see where this connection leads, or play it safe and treasure it as a beautiful memory? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm dying to know what you think? Don't forget to smash that like button if this story got your heart racing, hit subscribe for more steamy tales, and ring that notification bell so you never miss when things get spicy. Thanks for being here with me tonight.